So, hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Pit Yak a Crack. This is part 2 of our special guest interview with Tommy Miller. And where we left it last time, Tom, was we were talking about you had your time at Sunderland and you were about to move on. So, Stu, do you want to get it up from there?
So Tom, let's start back when you left Sunderland. What was that moment like for you personally?
Yeah, a bit disappointing. I'd signed a 2-year contract and I was hoping that it was going to be longer.
Yeah.
I hoping that it was going to do quite well and hopefully stay longer, but it wasn't to be. And I ended up moving on, which was a shame, but that's football. And I ended up going back to Ipswich. I had a couple of offers. I could have went to Leeds, but I ended up going back to Ipswich because the manager was Jim McGilton, someone who I knew very well. I'd played with him in my time there previously. And that we went back down south.
Yeah. So for you, do you think it was the right time for you to leave, or do you think you still had bits left that you could offer and fight for your place?
I think it was a case of 2-year contract was up. I didn't really figure in Roy Keane's plans. And you know what football's like. If you don't figure in someone's plans, and it's time to move on. So I was out of contract. I had a couple of options, like I've just said, and I ended up going back to Ipswich.
Yeah. So at that point, kind of, what was the reactions like from kind of people you knew, fans and family and stuff?
Yeah, I think it was tough on the family. I was moving back down 260 mile away, and I had a young family, young kids, so to move them at a really early age, I mean, they hadn't started school or anything like that.
Yeah.
They were just little babies, and we were going back down south, yes, to a place we knew really well, and we still had friends down there, but obviously all my family and stuff were up here, and it was hard for them as well because obviously little kids, little babies, they want to be around them all the time, so it was tough.
So looking back, obviously now that you reflect on your time there, what did you take away from your time at Sunderland that maybe you've stuck with you for the rest of your career?
It was a tough period. The 2 years at Sunderland was tough. I'm not going to lie about it. The team wasn't great. We struggled. We just weren't good enough in the Premier League. The second season, I think I touched on it in the previous episode. Roy Keane came in, changed a lot of things for the better as well. He had a lot of money to spend. I was injured in that period, and he brought some big names in, some big hitters in, and my face didn't really fit after that. I got fit, doing quite well for the reserves. We were having practice games behind closed doors, and I couldn't have done any more. Went out on loan, came back, and he sort of kept me in and around it, but I never really featured. I was sub a few times and came on, but it was few and far between.
So what would you say was the biggest difference from the Premier League to kind of the Champ and League 1 and 2 that you played in? What was the big difference, would you say?
I think the quality of players, definitely, that's an obvious one. The speed as well, it's quick, very quick. And from a personal point of view, I wasn't the quickest. Although I could run all day. I wasn't the quickest in terms of sharpness, but I had a good idea and good timings of getting into boxes and stuff like that. But yeah, the speed, definitely the speed. It was quick.
When you say you were fit, because I remember obviously playing with you, we just non-stop. Would you say, like the pre-seasons and stuff and the general fitness of the lads at that level were the next level kind of thing?
Higher. I think you when you start from the lower leagues, I think pre-season, you're always used to come back to pre-season to get fit. I think the higher you go, the lads these days are just looking after themselves when they're out of season, constantly. They don't have a break. So they're coming back pre-season fit and they're ready to go. So in the lower leagues, like I've just said, you come back to pre-season to get fit. Lads are fit now coming back to pre-season, I think.
What I find, like, when you think about professionals, so from the Premier League down to League 2, it's a full-time job, playing every day. How do the Premier League lads become fitter? Because surely that's just a work, or is it just the actual physiological over them?
I think it's the mentality.
I was going to say,
you look at the best players. Look at Ronaldo. Obviously, he's the creme de la creme, but look at the shape of him. Look at the way he conducts himself on and off the pitch. Very rarely misses games. He has the money to go with it as well. If he goes on holiday, he takes a chef with him. He takes also a personal fitness coach with him. He has it all, and I think a lot of Premier League, a lot of players have tried to follow suit with him a little bit, and I know other lads who've gone on holiday and they take people away with them and they remain fit. And I think since I finished playing, I mean, I'm running every day more or less, I like to keep fit, and it's just a bit of pride as well. It's a mentality thing. And in the Premier League, you've got lads there who are there and want to stay there. Whereas lads who go up for 1 or 2 seasons, yes, they might not be good enough, but have they got that mentality to really want to stay there? Some people, I think, go up, make a bit of money and think, oh, I've cracked it now, I'll have a couple of years, and then go back to the Championship. So everyone's different.
Yeah. I think a lot of the fitness now as well is kind of managed by kind of the sports science side,
Definitely.
isn't it? You know, I've heard rumours like Liverpool do this test that if you don't get it within a certain time, you won't, figure in the first team plans. You've got to hit certain.
Absolutely. And on the flip side of that, you've got lads in training, if they're doing too much, they get pulled from training.
Yeah.
Because they're working too hard, which is quite bizarre.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard from clubs at the top end where they're measuring obviously the speeds and the distances they're covering in training, and if they're getting to a certain level, they'll cut training or they'll pull that player out, and that's enough for you today. So, which is crazy.
I think sometimes as well, though, like the fitness side of it and being able to last 90 minutes is it sometimes a genetic thing as well in terms of.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, let's be honest, you've got to be fit to play football. It's a completely, other sports is different fitness, boxing. I mean, we've all done boxing training and you find that hard. But football, it's totally different training.
Yeah.
But you've got to be fit, 100%.
On the mindset thing, if you look at Ronaldo is the prime example, and he scored a overhead kick, didn't he? At an international, they beat Poland, I think it was.
Yeah, it was Poland. Yeah.
And he scored the 4th goal overhead kick, 40. Like, I wouldn't be able to get back up if I fell on the ground. I wouldn't get back up.
Yeah.
But and the other one was James Milner, and they reckon that every season when they would go back after having the time off, they'd do the bleep test.
Yeah.
And they reckon he'd win it every year,
Yeah.
even like into his mid-30s and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He was the fitness type.
When I was at Man United, Peter Schmeichel was at the front of the running every pre-season. Honestly.
That's a goalkeeper, that, isn't it? Yeah.
Just an absolute, like, he was like Dov Lundgren, wasn't he? He was just a machine, like.
Was he?
And he was at the front of all the running line. But I think his was mindset as well. He was the best. He knew he was the best. He wanted to stay that way.
I was reading something this week about Schmeichel and Steve Bruce, and they live next door to each other.
Yeah.
And Alex Ferguson was saying they just argue all the time, like constantly at each other. But they're best mates and they live next door to each other and they're in each other's houses and stuff. But to look at them, they just argue constantly. And I think that's a mindset thing as well.
It is. I mean, just touching back on that, I'm good friends with Steve Bruce's son, Alex.
Right.
So he obviously used to knock about with Casper. And I lived with Alex actually for 6 months when I went back to Ipswich. So he used to tell me stories about his dad and Peter, like, all the time, just falling out constantly. I think you saw that on the pitch.
Yeah.
But I think because they were both winners as well,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And they had the success. And I think if you ask Steve and you ask Pete, like, I'm sure that they get on well now, you know what I mean? Respect, yeah.
Definitely. So, obviously, you went back to Ipswich and you might have touched on it earlier. What was the thing that pulled you back there?
Yeah, the manager, Jim, like I said, I had a couple of options. I could have went to Leeds, which was down the road, wouldn't have had to uproot the family. I could have travelled every day. I think because of the sort of feel I had for Ipswich, the time I had previous, really enjoyed it. And Jim being the manager, I decided to go back and I enjoyed playing under him.
Yeah. So was there something about the club or the people there that kind of made it feel like home for you?
Yeah, I think so. Like I was going back to friends who I'd left behind. There was still a few lads there from my time previous. It was only 2 years, that I'd been gone.
This was your third stint.
This was my third stint, yeah, if you count me schoolboy day, yeah. So I had a real connection with the club, and in the end, it was an easy decision to go back.
So when you went back, obviously third time, but second time from like a professional point of view, in the terms of the squad style and stuff, what was different?
Well, you had a manager who was very fiery, Jim. I played with him and he was relentless, but a real winner. He wanted the best for you and want the best for the team. In terms of the players, it was a totally different feel. We're in the Championship. The money wasn't getting spent as much as it did previously, and so there was some young, hungry lads there, and some lads who had been bought from the lower leagues. Like a story to myself, when I went from Hartlepool the second time, and there was lads there who were coming from the lower leagues who were sort of trying to earn their crust, get their careers going, and there were some good lads.
Yeah. So you're always known for your goals from midfield. That's what everyone, when you mentioned Tommy Miller, it was like the Frank Lampard-esque of when you started out at Hartlepool and stuff. Did you feel more freedom to play your natural game at Ipswich?
I think that, yeah, I did, definitely. And I said when Joe Roy was the manager, he gave me freedom. You've got to have a manager who believes in you and who knows your strengths. And he certainly got the best out of me, and George Burley as well to a certain extent. And Jim knew what I was like. You know, like I said, I played with Jim. He knew my strengths, and I was a little bit older. So he sort of saw me a little bit wiser as well, and sort of more experienced to sort of control the middle of the pitch, whereas he used to do that for me. I was sort of doing it for him now, albeit he was on the sideline. So I was maybe starting attacks off, and I was enjoying it a little bit more because I was more experienced, and maybe I'd slowed down a little bit, if that was to sort of the right words. I was still getting a fair few goals, but I was also now playing with younger lads who were keen and eager, and they were wanting to get forward as well. So I was having to be a bit more sort of responsible. Then now,
Here when you went back.
I think I was about 28, 29.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I was sort of not getting on, but, you know, like
Yeah.
late 20s, and sort of just, I think I was a bit more wiser as a footballer.
So when you went back for the second time, what position in the current kind of formation would you say?
Yeah, well, we're playing like a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-3-1 as it is now, and I was more sort of deeper.
Right.
So I was sort of, if I was to make me runs, I was running from a bit more distance. You know, I was sort of running box to box, so you speak, rather than getting the ball higher up in the final third.
Did you find it different in the dressing room, Tom? So when first time there, you're younger. There's probably more experienced guys around you in the dressing room, but then you going back this time, you're the experienced
Absolutely.
one. Was the dynamic different in the dressing room?
Definitely, yeah. You had more responsibility, you know. And Jim was on to me every day. You need to run that dressing room. You need to run that dressing room. I brought you back to run it, you know. And was I ready to do that? There was times where I'd question myself because I still wanted to be that sort of the one who has a laugh and a joke, and, you know. But at the same time, he was wanting me a bit more experienced, a bit more level head, you know, guide the younger ones. And I'd like to think I did that as well with certain individuals.
Excellent.
Real. So from your return spell at Ipswich, is there any standout memories or, you know, matches from that period that make you smile?
No, I think we played Wolves one year, you know, and we were sort of bobbing around in and out the playoffs. Mick McCarthy was the manager of Wolves, and they were similar position to ourselves. I think there was about 4 or 5 games left of that season, and Wolves needed to win to stay in the playoffs and bits and bobs. I remember scoring a free kick. I think it was the last minute, 92nd minute, and I remember just running towards where Mick was, and Jim as well, who was on the pitch more or less. And that was a good moment, you know, a last minute free kick, and it sort of kept us in the hunt for the playoffs, which we didn't quite get there that season. But yeah, that was a good memory.
So just touching on that, and it's just brought a little memory back. Obviously you were managed by Mick McCarthy, and then now you're playing against him. How was, you know, the relationship when you got to the ground? Did he come over, and how?
Yeah, fine. Yeah, fine. And I'd say, and I've seen him a lot of times after that as well, you know, and no issues whatsoever. He's a great bloke,
Yeah.
smashing bloke. You know, he tells you how it is, honest, which is what you want as a player and as a person. So no, I got on really well with
I
him.
think these top managers kind of they all have that in common, because I was speaking with Danny Higginbottom recently, and he said that when he'd left Man United and he'd signed he was playing for Southampton at the time, and Man United went to the Dell, I think it was, and they relegated Southampton. And Danny was playing in the game, and he said after the game, the Southampton lads were in the dressing room for hours.
Yeah.
Heads between the legs, like total devastation. I get it, probably getting
Yeah.
Premier League, there's nothing like it.
Massive.
And he said, Stu, it must have been a good hour. We just sat in silence, like nobody saying a word, just devastated. He says, we ended up getting showered. I walked out. He says, and Alex Ferguson was just stood by the door. He said he'd waited all this time. He said, and I walked out, and he just put his arms out like that. And he said, he just gave us a cuddle. And he just said, Danny, I'm so sorry. And what he said is, he says, we had the FA Cup final against Chelsea coming up the following week. He said, I had to play my strongest team. I'm so sorry, son.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, and with relegation, obviously, listen, you can have all the money in the world, and money can at times make you happy, but what's more important is your pride.
Mm.
You know, you don't want to be relegated. You know, and when I was at Sunderland, it happened, and it hurt. It definitely hurt. You know,
That's where you want to get to.
That's where you want to get to, and you've worked so hard to get there.
Yeah.
You know, and I had a brief thing of it at Ipswich when we were there, and it hurt. You know, and you've got to sort of be tough mentally, which I've said in the previous episode, to come back from it. You know, and it's disappointing. Yeah.
Do you take it home, Tom, when you
Definitely.
do you?
Definitely. I was the world's worst. You know, I'd go back if we'd got beat or we hadn't won, and you'd take it out on the family at times, which is not great. You'd sulk. You wouldn't want to do anything with them. You just want to watch the telly by yourself, and that's hard. People don't see that side of things. People think, oh, he's got that money, he's got that car, or he's got that house. He'll be going home. He doesn't care. We care.
Yeah.
We absolutely care.
Well, I think obviously I've been in coaching for years now, and there's something about when you become a footballer, a professional footballer, there's something about your mindset is just a winner, and that can be in training, it can be in a rondo practice, it can be in a passing drill, to be the best. And when I'm coaching now, and a lot of mine's younger kids, I don't see that in a lot of them.
No.
You know, I don't see that will to be the best at whether you're doing a passing drill, a rondo, a possession, a game. Some people are just happy to go through the motions, and that's my worry of you'll never be a professional footballer. You haven't got that mindset.
But is that because at an academy at an early age, it's all about development? They all say it, and it's not about winning. But there's got to be a point where, yes, I get it. You know, it is all about development at an early age, but there's got to be a time where you've got to win.
You do.
Do you know what I mean? You don't want to grow up being a second place or third and not winning anything and being a loser as such. You want to win things. That's why you're playing football. You don't want to go through your career. I mean, yes, I won a few things along the way, but you don't want to just bob along and sort of think, oh, I'm just making the numbers up here. You know, you're playing sport or you play whatever to be successful, really.
Sports.
And some are lucky and some aren't.
Do you find, though, that it's changed? You know, there's things like it is set up to a certain age group now, they don't record the score. And that just...
No league table and stuff like that. No league table
and medals for taking part. You know, not a winning medal, but a medal because you were there and you took part. When we were growing up, it was you were saying your dad was really tough on you. Ours was a nightmare. Yeah. You know what I mean? If you hadn't played well, you'd come off the pitch and jump in the car with him, and then he'd be at you. You know, everything that you did wrong.
Halls were the worst.
I grew up with my dad, and he won't like me for saying this, but he'd be saying things like puffy knackers. That's what he'd say to me. Used to puffy knackers because you hadn't gone into a strong challenge or something. You know what I mean? And I ended up, because of that, getting to the point where I'd go into ridiculous challenges because I knew that's what he wanted me to do. Yeah. And so much so, I got into me and I was playing for an Easington side. I can't remember. It might have been the half. I can't remember. It was an Easington side. And we were playing at Durham, and I'm 30 something, and I go into a challenge that I should never have gone into, and I go, oh, that hurt that. So I sit down for a little bit, and you know, it's like the lads come on, and the bandaged it up just with what we had, and it started hurting more, and I was like, get that off. No, this was, I broke my ankle, and they strapped it up, and it started swelling inside the strap, and so I limp off, and it was badly broken as well. I took a little piece of bone off the bottom and stuff. They thought they might have to put a rod through and make it solid because they didn't know if the ball was going to set by him. But anyway, people afterwards, the point of that story was people were saying, why did you go in for that challenge? It was absolutely ridiculous, Sonny, what you're doing. Yeah. It was because of the mindset that put it. So even in my 30s, I couldn't let it go. And I had to, you know what I mean? But what you see now is definitely, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, I'm not clever enough to tell you that, but people have changed kids' mindset that it's okay to lose. It's okay to be second, and it's okay not to win. Yeah,
it has. I think it's been a culture shift, hasn't it? I mean, when you talk about the formats of football as well, and this is just something that I've thought about. They changed it years ago, didn't they? Where I went 4v4s, 5v5, 6v6 at the younger ages, so they can get touches on the ball. Yeah. We never had that. No, we were playing 11-a-side at 8-year-old. When people talk about now, when you see them in that, he struggles to get about the pitch, his mobility's not great. These kids are at 11 and 12. Now, have we done them injustice by putting the pitch small at such a young age where they don't have to cover ground? It's just like 10 yards. And
not used to it from an early age. Yeah. Good.
So did we train our bodies when we played 11-a-side at 8 and 9 that we got about the park and we went through that?
True.
You know, so I get why they did it. So kids could get touches of the ball because it's important. Yeah. You might play an 11v11 game as one of the lesser players and you might not get a touch of the ball. Mm-hmm. So I get it from that respect. But are we doing injustices to the people that, of getting to an age where 14, 15, they can't run?
Can't get around the pitch.
And that's why they're being released.
And you won't know until a generation on because, people make decisions, don't they? These academics make decisions and say, we'll go to small-sided and all this type of stuff. And then in 10 years' time, you go, actually, that wasn't the right thing to do.
Always go full circle.
Yeah,
Go back to how it was
definitely.
when we were, like, a lot of things do in life.
That's what I think as well, Tom. I was talking to my wife about it recently, that decisions that are being made now, and about everything, about this gender thing and all of these things, in 10, 20 years' time, some of the decisions we're making right now, people go, why on earth did you do that?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you won't know that until all them years on, and you look back and go, what on earth were they doing at that point there? Sorry, I was just going to say, how long were you at Ipswich in this spell?
2 years.
Right.
So 2 years. So I was coming towards the end of the second year, and it was about February time. And I was sort of up in the air, am I getting a new contract? I was playing in the team, and Jim sort of pulled me in the office and he went, listen, he said, if we don't get in the playoffs, I won't be here. There was talk of a takeover going on and all sorts. He said, if you can get yourself fixed up, you get yourself fixed up. So he sort of gave me a sort of heads up as to, listen, if you can get sorted. But there was a few clubs circling, and Sheffield Wednesday came in. So I more or less agreed to go to Sheffield Wednesday end of March, maybe beginning of April. So I knew I was going to leave Ipswich before the season finished.
Right.
I signed a pre-contract. Within that time, we sort of just missed out on the playoffs. However, Jim lost his job with 3 games to go, and in comes Roy Keane. So there was a lot of speculation leading up to when Jim was towards the end saying, Roy Keane might be getting the Ipswich job. Roy Keane's been spotted in Ipswich looking at houses and all that sort of stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, really? And sure to be that Jim gets the sack. I remember walking in the training ground and we had a meeting. We got a message saying there's going to be a meeting 9 o'clock Monday morning or whenever it was, Tuesday morning or something like that. And I remember I used to get in early anyway. I used to get in really early for training. And I've walked in the door and he's Roy Keane, first person I see. And his first words were to me, I bet you never ever thought you'd see me again, Tommy. And I sort of looked at him and he shook my hand. Listen, there was no fallout with him or anything like that. I got on quite well with him, but I was like, I'm pleased I know where I'm going. There's 3 games left. So he might have kept me on, but I don't think he would have done. As it happens, he didn't, but I was moving anywhere. But it's just mad how football works.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's who it was. Roy got the Ipswich job.
What was it like playing for your mate, Tom? Because obviously you'd played football with Jim and then you'd gone back. So what was it like having the manager being your mate?
Yeah, that was quite hard. Jim's a really good friend of mine. And we've gone on holidays together, end of the season and all sorts of stuff and nights out. We had a good social side, me and Jim, and other lads as well. And that was tough, because if it wasn't working on the pitch, probably going back to like what my dad was like, he was on me.
Yeah.
So I'd heard it all before at a younger age, he was more like I don't want to say he's a father figure because he's not loads older than me, but he would be onto me. Do you know what I mean? And I used to have flashbacks to all them memories years and years ago, that tough love from my dad, as you call it, which didn't do me no harm, but it was tough because there was a few times where he wouldn't speak to me, but he was like that when he played. Because if he didn't pass him the ball, he'd fall out here anyway. He'd fall out with anybody.
Yeah.
He was that type of character. But it had its good times as well. But yeah, it was a bit tricky as well.
Yeah.
Tough.
So when Jim goes and Roy Keane comes in, there's only a few games left.
Yes.
Did you notice an immediate sort of shift in the dynamic, in the way he was training and all that type of stuff?
Yeah, there was a few lads who'd worked under him before as well, under Roy, and they were sort of telling the other lads what he's like and stuff like that. And there was money now. There was a takeover in the background. There was going to be money to be spent. And so they knew that Ipswich was going to go, I was going to say one way. It didn't in the end because Roy struggled at Ipswich and he spent a lot of money. And I just look back and I think if Jim had been given the money to spend, Jim would have got the team promoted, 100%. So it was unfortunate the way things worked out for myself, but obviously I was going to Sheffield, left Ipswich, which I thought I might have been there a few more years or certainly at least 1 or 2, because I thought this is where I see myself sort of finishing my career or certainly getting towards the end of it. Yeah. So I was uprooting again, but like I said, Roy had a lot of money to spend at Ipswich and struggled and failed. And I think a lot of players are in fear of Roy, like playing under him. because we said before when I was at Sunderland and when he came in, the standards are so high what he expects.
Yeah.
And players aren't on the same level as what he was. He was a top player. One of the best box-to-box midfielders we've seen.
Yeah. Quite intimidating as a character.
Intimidating as a character. You know, that look, that stare, you know, you don't know whether he's being serious or whether he's having a laugh.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's just got that aura about him where I think a lot of lads sort of playing within themselves.
Yeah.
You know, when they're playing and when they're training.
You were at your best when you played with freedom.
Yeah,
If you
exactly.
don't play with that.
And if you feel a bit uptight
Yeah.
and you feel a bit sort of, oh, he wants us to do that, or that's what he's after, and it's yes,
Yeah.
because it's sort of, you won't get the best out of people. And I think that's what happened at Ipswich. He didn't get the best out of people because a lot of people were not scared. Scared's the wrong word, but in fear of him a little bit.
You often watch the games on the telly, and a phrase they use all the time is, you've got to be brave to go and get on the
Yes.
ball. And I think if it's bad enough anyway that you've got to be brave to go and get on the ball, to think if I lose it, I'm getting it here. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm just not going to go and
Yeah.
show for it.
And
And
a lot
you
of
can
people
hide in the
go-
game, can't you?
Absolutely, a lot of people go under the, you know what I mean, go missing.
Is that
Because of
the
it.
reasons why he I wouldn't say he struggled, but because he did well at Sunderland, but is that one of the reasons why he might not be in management now? Because he understands that, you know, people are scared of him in that respect and they don't get the best out of him.
Possibly, and I think a lot of owners and chairmen are maybe that way.
Same, yeah.
They know how demanding he'll be.
Yeah.
And they'll, you know, it'll take someone big or someone strong-willed to maybe take him up again. But
Definitely. So obviously you've gone to Chef Ware, I mean, a huge club, another sleeping giant, you know, there's quite a few of them about at the moment, you know. So did that remind you of kind of, you know, your Sunderland days, a big club who were underachieving a little bit and big expectations?
definitely, Sheffield Wednesday is massive.
Yeah.
You don't realise the size of it until you're actually there,
Yeah.
you know, and the stadium, the history the stadium has, you know, it's a good old-fashioned football league ground, you know, and it's been to the top and it hasn't, you know, it's struggled lately and it struggled a little bit when I was there, you know, in the sort of League One and the Championship, where it's definitely a Premier League club. Well, the size of it, the fan base is massive, the rivalry between Sheffield Wednesday and Sheffield United,
Yeah.
you know, the city, it's thriving, and it's just a shame to see them where they are and where they were when I was there as
Yeah.
well, because they deserve so much better.
So who took you there? Who was the
Brian Laws was the manager.
right?
Yeah.
Forest full.
Yeah, Brian Laws, him and Russ Wilcox, you know, good guys, you know, good manager. And they moved on, you know, it didn't quite work for them when I was there. They sort of strolled a little bit. And on a personal point of view, I started picking up injuries. So I was I was 30s now, 31, 30, 31. And I'd never had tears in my muscles or anything leading up to going to Sheffield Wednesday. And I started getting muscle tears and
Right.
hamstring. And as I said, I wasn't sharp, I wasn't rapid, I wasn't quick. I tore my hamstring, I tore my thigh muscle. I remember, I think it was about 4 weeks into pre-season, and I've gone in for a challenge with Leon Clark in training, and I've just sort of outstretched my leg, and I felt something go in my thigh, and I thought it was like a dead leg. It was weird because like I'd never done it before, and I'd end up tearing my rectus femoris muscle in my thigh, which is the main muscle down the leg and the front, and I missed 6 to 8 weeks. And anyone will tell you, if you miss pre-season,
Yeah.
you know, I was halfway through pre-season, feeling good, feeling fit. And then to do that towards the end of pre-season, when I came back, I was sort of playing catch-up again. So it wasn't the best of starts for me Sheffield Wednesday career. Got back fit, got in the team, enjoyed it, you know, scored a few goals. But we didn't really, as a team, kick on when we should have done.
Yeah. What level was that at that time, Tom?
It was a championship.
Championship.
Yeah, we were in the championship, yeah.
Yeah.
So massive club. And then Brian Laws lost his job. And Alan Irvine came in, fantastic coach. Him and Rob Kelly, and both really good coaches. And I think that was maybe not an issue, but because they were both coaches, they both wanted to do the same job.
Right.
So there wasn't really, I wouldn't class Alan Irvine as a manager. Do you know what I mean? Although he did his best and he tried and all that, and we had a good squad, but they were just two really good coaches. Really.
Was there anyone in that squad who like made an impression on you from a
Yeah.
personal or, you know, playing?
Well, I played with some good characters. I mean, I remember that when I first signed and we had a pre-season in Malta, and maybe I should have thought this at the time. I should have thought it's not gonna go too well. This.
Right.
We went to Malta and we stayed bang central in the main area. I think it was Valletta or somewhere we went, and it was thriving. It was clubs, bars, everything around us. And I remember Brian Laws just saying, "Listen, lads, you can have a couple of nights out. but don't go crazy, because we were up earlier the next day for training. Well, there was lads going out left, right and centre and not getting in until 5, 6 in the morning, then going to training. It got to be on the bus for 8:30 or 9 o'clock. And it was bizarre. And I remember room with Franny Jeffers. Franny's a great lad, you know what I mean? Fantastic lad. And he had his injury problems the season before. So he was like, right, Tommy, I'm not going out. You know, I'm staying in and all this sort of stuff. It gets to day 2. Well, he was out. So I was living with him. So I thought, well, I'll have to go out. And then you had Mickey Gray was there at the time, so he liked the night out as well. So it wasn't the best of starts pre-season, because pre-season you want to get fit. And yes, you normally have a night out at the end of a trip, maybe, or stuff like that. But as lads, as a team, it was too easy for us to go out every night nearly.
Yeah.
And although we were training the next day and putting the work in, it was probably the wrong sort of location to go to. The wrong place to stay, you know, back central.
I was going to ask you earlier, nowadays, like, I don't think many top professionals drink. I just think that's the way it is now.
Going out the game out, isn't it?
When you were at your different clubs that you were at, was there like a set, was it a weekend thing, or was it a monthly thing, or did some just never go out? Or?
I think I saw it changing as I got older, definitely, because from the young years going to Ipswich, you know, we used to go to London on Tuesday.
Right.
You know, because we'd normally be off on a Wednesday, so we'd get the train down to London on a Tuesday straight after training. You know, it's an hour into London, and we'd go out in London and have a few drinks, and sometimes stay over, sometimes get the last train back.
What do you mean by a few drinks?
Well, quite a lot. But yeah, it was. I think that's just how it was.
Yeah.
You know, but as you get older and as the years went on,
Sunderland in the Premier League, what was that like?
Yeah, there was nights out in Sunderland, and we used to go out in Newcastle. Right. And again, if we had the day off, and I think a lot of managers encourage that as well for team spirit.
Yeah.
You know, if you'd had a bad week or you'd had a bad result, what's the harm? Get yourself out. You're still disappointed that you got beaten. You're still gutted, and it's still in your head. But at the same time, go and sort of have a few beers and try and forget it, or try and put it at the back of your mind, and then we move on to the next games. A lot of managers encourage that, and like I said, we used to go out in Newcastle quite a lot when we were at Sunderland. We very rarely went out in Sunderland, and we had some good nights out. And you try to get the team spirit going as well.
So obviously, you know, at Chef Wed, you know, you said your roles had changed slightly from when you went back, and you're getting a little bit older now. It kind of your role even changed more at Chef Wed.
It did. Yeah. It did, yeah. And again, I was being the one to sit a little bit more. So getting on the ball and try and help things on and start the attacks, and occasionally getting in the box, but not as free-flowing as what I used to be. I think I still scored 11 goals in the second season. There was a few penalties along the line. I was still taking penalties. But I missed my first penalty, my first ever penalty. I remember it. It was against Charlton. Rob Elliott was the goalkeeper.
Was he?
And I think I was on something like, I don't know if it's definite, because as I'm getting old, my memories are going a little bit. I think I was on something like, I don't know, 29, 30 out of 30 penalties I've scored.
Right.
So I was quite successful in the penalty spot. I was confident. I never practiced them. I just knew if I had hit it, connected properly, a good hard side foot, the keeper wasn't getting there, even if he went that side. But as the years gone on, obviously a lot of goalkeepers coaches are doing the research. You know, they're watching where all your penalties are going now. And I've took this penalty against Charlton, and I'll be honest with you, I've hit it well. I've gone. I used to always go to the keeper's left, or more or less go to the keeper's left a lot of the time. And I've hit this penalty, and I thought, yeah, it's in corner. And Rob Elliott's made a good save. And the feeling of missing a penalty was just because I'd never had it. I used to just step up, think, yeah, it's a goal. And I missed, and I was like, wow, what happens now? You know what I mean? It was strange. But yeah, I scored, like, let's say 11 goals or whatever that season, in the second season at Chevy Wednesday. So did all right, played with some good players, and played for a massive club.
So at your time, you're 31, did you say? Are you obviously one more experienced?
Yes. Yeah, Mickey Gray moved on the first season. Franny was still around, still a bit of experience, but his younger year. And then we had younger lads coming through, you know, some good players. They play for a big club, massive club. But we failed as a group because we didn't get up. Do you know what I mean? We didn't get promoted. Gary Megson came in after Ellen Irvine, and I was living in the same street as Gary Megson. I have a habit of moving near managers or living near managers, and Gary Megson made us captain. But again, this is a bit disappointing. I would finish at Sheffield Wednesday, if I'm honest with you, because I was captain the last 10, 12 games of the season. We'd started picking up a little bit, but didn't quite get to where we wanted to get. We didn't get in the playoffs. And I was in with Gary Megson, I think just towards the end of the season. There was a few games left, and he just said, listen, he said, there'll be a new contract for you. Nothing to worry about. We'll sit down at the end of the season. We'll get it sorted. So in my mind, I'm thinking I'm staying. Nothing to worry about as such. You know, I've got kids are in nursery now, so we're obviously looking at junior schools and stuff like that.
When you moved to Sheffield by the
Moved to Sheffield, yeah. I lived in a lovely place. It was Door. It was on the edge of the Peak District. It was beautiful. You know, I'd made some lovely friends there who I'm still in touch with now, and some of the lads who I played with. And then when at the end of the season, expected to be offered something, and the goalposts had changed, which was disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Gary Megson had just said, listen, we can't offer you anything. And I was like, what do you mean you can't offer us anything? I was in a few weeks earlier saying you were giving us a new deal, and that's how it is. Yeah. Like I said, I was captain and enjoying my time, and it was a great club and hoping to kick on the next season, but it wasn't to be.
Okay.
Felt fit, yeah, even though I'd had a couple of muscle injuries. I'd done my thigh, like I touched on, and I'd done my hamstring as well in the second season. Muscle tears, which were a bit of a nightmare to come back from. But got back, got fit, and doing well, playing in the team and scoring a few goals. And unfortunately, 2 years, and then I was on the move again.
Did you play in a derby?
I did play in a derby. Yeah, big derby. Yeah.
What was that? So you played in a derby, so to speak, Sunderland, Middlesbrough, didn't you?
Yes.
And then you've played in a Sheffield derby. What's the comparison?
Yeah, Sunderland Newcastle can't be beat. That is massive.
Did you play in a Sunderland Newcastle derby?
I did.
Right, okay.
I played in both at St James and the Stadium of Light.
Right.
Massive games, then. They are massive. Sheffield Wednesday and Sheffield United is big, very big, but nothing compares to Sunderland Newcastle.
Yeah. Is there a nervousness, Tom?
Yes.
At those games?
100%.
Yeah?
Yeah. The night before, it just, everything feels different.
You know what the crowd are going to
You know what the crowd's going to be like, you know, and you just sort of putting things in your head, thinking if this happens, if that happens, what happens if we win, you know. We didn't win, which was disappointing, but just such a great atmosphere in both occasions.
And you scored in the Borough.
I scored in the Borough one, which is not really a derby, is it? I mean, but that was a good feeling, you know, to score. It was live on Sky, and that was a good feeling to score in that. And especially living where I live, there's a lot of Middlesbrough fans, you know, around the area. So that was a good feeling going in there.
Definitely, yeah.
So obviously your time came to an end at Chef Wedge, so you're on the move again. And where was the next destination for you?
Yeah, I got a phone call from Paul Stevenson, who I'd played with at Hartlepool, and he was assistant manager at Huddersfield under Lee Clark. And he just said, listen, they've been knocking on the door for about 2 or 3 seasons in League One and just hadn't quite got over the line. And he just said, listen, we're looking for someone like yourself to come in. Would you be interested? And I said, definitely. At this time, I decided to move back north. So I'd leaving Sheffield now. I thought I'm going to get the kids back, try and get them settled into school, because they're getting to, I think they were 5, 6 or something now. So it was time to get them settled in somewhere. I didn't want to keep moving them, uprooting them and all sorts of stuff. So got back to the house what I'd bought when I was at Sunderland. I'd rented that out and obviously got them people out and moved back home as such. And I decided to sign for Huddersfield, which was commutable. It wasn't too far. You know, I could do it every day, or I could stay over, or I could get the train. And I was going to a good club that was ambitious, that wanted to get to the next level. You know, they were at the top of League One, just couldn't get over the line. So I thought there's something going to be good happening. And as it happens, I went there and we got promoted, which was a great season, and went up through the playoffs. Missed a penalty in the shootout at Wembley.
Did you?
We beat Sheffield United on penalties. It was bizarre, the game. It was the hottest day ever. Bit cagey, nothing really happening in the game. And I remember there was a few minutes to go in extra time, and there's a corner comes over, and I've sort of get my foot on it, and it got cleared off the line. So we could have won it then, you know, and then it goes to penalties. And I just remember going to the toilet, busting for the toilet. So quickly, as soon as the game finished, extra time, I ran to the toilet, and as I've come back out, the penalties are more or less starting. And Jordan Rhodes, who was prolific, absolute goal machine. I think he'd scored 30 goals or whatever that season. He just sort of chucked me the ball, and he went, "You're up." I went, "All right, okay." So I'm getting the ball, and I've gone up, and always confident from the spot. And I remember the walk from the halfway line, and it just felt like the longest walk ever.
In New Wembley.
Yes. So I've put the ball on the spot, And I thought, right, okay, compose myself a little bit. And I've hit it to the side I normally go, but I didn't connect properly. Whether that was a feel of nervousness or anxiousness, or like I said, I was never nervous from the spot, never ever. Huddersfield fans were behind the goal, the whole occasion, and I just didn't hit it properly, and it happens, and the keeper makes a save, and it's funny because it was Steve Simonson who saved the penalty. Now I remember Steve Simonson when we were at Shotton Boys, and he was an outfielder, and I think he played for one of the South Shields team, or he played for a team up that way.
Yeah.
Which is bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
And now he was in goal against me at Wembley, and he saved the penalty, and we missed our first three. Sheffield United missed their first three. It was ridiculous. And they had Harry Maguire and all sorts playing, and we won, which was, it went round. It was the keeper, got to the keepers. So Alex Smithies for us scored a great penalty. And then Simonson was up for them, and he missed, and he ballooned it over the bar. If he scored, I was back up. So you can imagine what I was feeling at that time. I was thinking, oh my God, I'm back up. And as I've said, never ever nervous from the penalty spot, always confident. But you can imagine, if he scores, I'm back up again, second time round.
So now you were feeling the...
Oh, absolutely. So when he missed, the emotions and all sorts, it was the best feeling ever.
Yeah.
To get promoted is great. But
the
family were there to do it at Wembley in front of a big crowd. To get promoted is nothing better.
I'm saying, like, you've had an unbelievable career, but sometimes them ones there can be the ones that...
Absolutely. And if we'd missed, if we hadn't got promoted, to this day, I'd probably still be thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But because we won, it sort of, masks it a little bit.
Yeah.
That, and a couple of other lads missed. I wasn't the only one. We missed our first three, and we still won, which was mental. So no, it was one of the best days in football, but on a personal level.
Yeah.
We were going from the League One to the Championship, which was still big and good for the club and good for a financial point of view. But the Premier League one is massive, isn't it, from the Championship?
But just winning at Wembley, Tom,
winning at Wembley, that winning feeling. I mean, you don't want to lose, do you? Going back to growing up as a kid, you want to be a winner, you want to be successful, and to win at Wembley, like I said, no better feeling.
I've always wondered, so that them night, that day when you've won, what happened on the night?
Oh, it was just, well, you can imagine, the drinks flow and everything. It was badly organised, if I'm honest, because we were on the bus, and obviously you can imagine the bus was bouncing all the way back to Huddersfield, and there was like
so you went back to Huddersfield?
We went back to Huddersfield. Sometimes a lot of teams stay. Well, we went to a bar in London, which was sort of right near Wembley. The hotel was booked out, actually. A lot of clubs do that. They pre-book it just in case.
Right.
So it was like a rooftop bar right next to Wembley. I can't remember the name of the hotel. So we went there for an hour, a couple of hours maybe. And then we all on the bus, and there was going to be like a bit of a party back at the hotel in Huddersfield. But we went back, and it wasn't great, really. I mean, the families were invited, but not many families went back. I think because it was that late, and a lot of people have kids as well and stuff like that. And we ended up going back there. Then we went into Huddersfield for a little bit, but I think it could have been better.
Right.
But still a decent night and still a good time on the bus and good memories as well.
Steve was out, was he?
Steve-O was out, yeah. Steve Watson was there as well. Sorry, Steve-O wasn't there now because Simon Grayson came in. So sorry, we jumped the gun a little bit. Lee Clark, for all he'd done for Huddersfield, I think he's got the record as well. There were 52 games unbeaten over the course of 2 seasons, which is an unbelievable achievement. I think they beat Nottingham Forest's record at the time. And we were sort of just outside the playoffs, and Lee Clark got sacked. He had a difference of opinions with the chairman, which was a real shame. And Simon Grayson came in, who got plenty of promotions on his CV, and he got us over the line.
Hartlepool manager.
And now the Hartlepool manager, yeah.
So obviously, how long have you signed here with Huddersfield now? It was another 2-year contract you'd signed? Or?
Well, I signed a 1-year contract
with
the option of another year on their terms. And again, it didn't sort of end how I would like it to have done. I was travelling every day, which wasn't an issue. But it's only an hour and a half there, an hour and a half back. Simon Grayson sort of got us at the end of the season and said, listen, there's nothing there for you now. Listen, managers have their opinions, and it's not a problem. I played in every game for him. I'd like to think I helped the club get promoted, which I did. I was part of it. And then for him to sort of say, oh, well, we're going to go down a different route. Whether it was an age thing, I don't know. I played with a lad called Damien Johnson, who was a similar age in midfield. and they give him another year.
Ex-Blackburn. Like.
Yes, ex-Blackburn, and great player as well. Very good Northern Irish lad, yeah. Really good player. And maybe he thought the two of us maybe couldn't do it or couldn't play it together in the Championship, which, listen, it's all about opinions, football, and we shake hands and we move on. So I ended up leaving Huddersfield after 1 year. So sort of done my job, helped get them promoted, but just a shame I couldn't really have stayed a bit longer.
So that comes to an end. Where's the next destination for you?
The next destination was Swindon. So it's quite bizarre, this, because...
So you're coming back up north, further up.
Exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. So I get a phone call from an agent. I can't remember his name. And I thought it was a wind-up at first.
Right.
So I get a phone call. Said, how are you doing? It's, and he went, I'm Paolo Di Canio's agent. And all right, okay. And he went, Paolo's interested in having a chat with you down Swindon. Can you get down tomorrow? And I was like, is this a wind-up this or what? You know what I mean? I'm sort of thinking to myself. Anyway, he sends us the details as well. He sends us a text message. He says, this is the trains you can get from the northeast, all that sort of stuff. So I thought, it must be genuine. And so I ended up getting the train down, going to Swindon. And I'd heard stories about Paolo being quite eccentric and quite lively, but I'm looking at the football side of things, and absolute legend of a football. Yeah. You know, I'm thinking, wow, this would be mega to work for him. You know, even at my age now, 34, 33, 34, thinking I can still learn a few things or two. You're never too old. So I remember going in, and he sort of sat with his coaching staff in the room, and just looking at him, just in awe of him, really. You know, that presence. Similar to Roy Keane, you know, like Roy Keane presence. The way he looked as well, he was just immaculate. The way he dressed, you know, he was so like cool as such. Swindon had just been promoted, so they were in League One, and he just said his first words were sort of in his Italian accent. He was like, you missed the penalty at Wembley." I know, cheers. I forgot about that, but and then he was sort of like, you know, you're a winner, you've won, you've got promoted. We want you in the building to help our team, our younger lads. You'll be perfect for us, and all that sort of stuff. And I was just blown away by like what he had to say and sort of how he's seen the game and how they want to play. And I thought, this is a bit of me, this. And again, it's 260 odd mile away from home, Swindon. You know, I couldn't have got much further really from the northeast. So I came back home and sort of had to think about things, you know, and could I do it? You know, what was I going to do? Young family, all sorts of stuff. And I ended up signing for a year. And so I ended up going down, renting a place. And when I initially met him, he was like, this English mentality of no days off. He said, we train hard, we work hard. You know, it's the most important. Wednesday, this English mentality of always Wednesday off, no chance. He said, we always in, we work hard. And I was sort of looking, I was saying, is he being serious? Surely you must get a day off. So I remember signing, I used to think, I was saying to the wife and the kids, like, I'll be back, you know what I mean? I'll get back when I can. And obviously want to see the kids growing up, even though it was only going to be for a year initially. I'll still get back, whether that be driving or train. I'll get back to see you. Well, we went, I think, 73 days without a day off. It was relentless. Monday, Tuesday, every day, Sunday, everything. And he classed, I remember that the day off he classed was the day we travelled back from Italy from pre-season. That was your day off. We were in the next day. And a lot of people think, you know what I mean? It was mental and it was mad, but in a strange sort of way, I loved it. Right. I loved playing for him. And a lot of people, he doesn't get much sort of praise because I read a lot of the Sunderland players, and I know a lot of the Sunderland players who played under him, and they couldn't handle it. They hated him. They hated his methods, they hated his style, they hated the way he managed with the no days off because they're used to days off. And at Swindon, I loved it. I was one of the fittest, probably the fittest I'd been since I was like a young kid at Hartlepool. I was in good shape, whether that was because he changed the diets a little bit as well, what you were eating.
You take sauces out of the can.
Sauces out the can. I mean, I was never big on sauce anyway. You went about butter, which was bizarre because when we went to Italy, you could have this cake at the end of training or after a meal, which was full of butter. So it was very like sort of strict and regimental and sort of stuff like that. And the pre-season training was ridiculous. And I mean ridiculous. We'd be doing like 1,000 meters and we'd be like, how many are we doing today to that? The fitness coach, who was Italian, and he was like, you're doing 23 of them. 23. It was just like bizarre numbers, you know, like it was just random numbers. And you're thinking 23, 1,000 metres. And in red hot heat in Italy, you know, it was ridiculous heat. But like I just said, it was the fittest I'd felt since I was young.
Yeah.
You know, since I was a young lad at Hartlepool, I was in real good shape and could run all day and enjoyed playing under him and learnt a lot from him as well.
So what was your role in that team?
My role in the team was I was playing alongside a lad called Simon Ferry, who is a funny lad. He's got a podcast, actually. What a lad, yeah. He was at Celtic as a kid and he could run all day.
Yeah.
So me and him sort of matched each other well.
As a two?
As a two in the middle. And we had Matt Ritchie on one wing, who went on to Newcastle and obviously had a fantastic career. Young kids, yeah. And we had Gary Roberts on the left-hand side, who signed from Huddersfield with myself, and I'd play with him at Ipswich as well. We had Big Flint at the back, Aidan Flint, who was a monster at the back, you know, dominating in both boxes. We had a goalkeeper, Wes Fotheringham. But we had a good team, you know, and we were doing really well. But just touching back on how I said about Roy Keane, where maybe his chairman and directors are sort of in fear of him a little bit because of his demands. Paolo Di Canio was demanding. You know, the budget was stretched to the limit. And I think it was about March time. We were top of the league. We were flying, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Training on a daily basis was very much Groundhog Day. You knew what you were doing every day.
Right.
And it was the same week in, week out. And I remember having a conversation with Paolo about this. And he said, at this level, he said, lads, switch off like that. He said, you have to keep drumming it into them all the time because this is why they're playing at this level. Mine was a different reason. I was old. I was coming down the pecking order a little bit now. I'd been at the top. I was working my way back down through an age thing. And lads were sort of learning the way a little bit at this level. And he kept doing it, the same things day in, day out. Now, a lot of the lads used to complain about it. This again, this again, this again. But if you ask Aidan Flint, you ask Simon Ferry, you ask Matt Ritchie, you ask them what's helped them get to where they've got or where they played, I'll tell you Paolo Di Canio, %.
Yeah.
Because he improved players, definitely at that level.
What was his style, Tom? Did he want to play out from the back?
Wanted to play out from the back. He mixed it up a little bit. You know, he knew the players at times. If they weren't good enough to play out from the back, we'd go long. We'd go direct into the big striker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then play from that. He liked the ball to get out wide. He liked crosses in the box. He liked his wingers getting at defenders, getting at full-backs, you know, positive, nice and positive. And he wanted you fit. Like I said, pre-season was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And we were very close. We were top. And then there was talk that the chairman was going to pull out. This got to about February, March time. And Paolo wasn't happy. He wanted to bring 3 or 4 players in to keep us up there. The new owners weren't playing ball with them. They were saying your budget's already over the top, over the limit. And there was a big fallout. And Paolo left. You know, and I think you'll have seen in papers and videos that he still had keys for the ground. So I think he went in at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and got all his stuff. And I think he put stuff on the walls, or I don't know, there was cameras in there. And he sort of left really in a bad way. And if he'd have stayed, he'd have got them over the line. 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. But that's football. And listen, I get it from a sort of ownership point of view. They're already over the budget and they are touching, you know, really massive budget.
So did you end up going up or not?
So he walked out, him and his staff walked out, and me and a lad called Darren Ward got the job.
Right.
Which we were player managers, but we both wanted to still play.
Yeah.
So it was tough, but it was my sort of first taste of management. I was on with my UEFA badge at the time as well, but we didn't want to change anything. So we just kept everything the same.
Right.
Because why change it when we're up at the top of the league? There was no reason to change it. Yes, Paolo's walked out and he's gone and all that sort of stuff, but it was working what he was doing. So we kept everything the same. And we went to see the new owner and we just said, listen, we still want to play in the team. Darren Ward was, I think, a year or 2 older than me. But he was fit as a fiddle, played centre half. And I was 34 now or whatever, 33, 34. And I still wanted to play. I was still fit. So we just said, listen, we can't do both roles. We need to get someone in. So we got Kevin MacDonald in, ex-Aston Villa. He came in with Mark Cooper, who was a player at Hartlepool when I was in the youth team. So they came in and that season we finished in the playoffs and we got beat off Brentford. And just look at what Brentford are doing now. You know, they pushed on and kicked on, whereas Swindon had bobbed up and down a little bit, which was a shame because we were so close. And if Di Canio had been given them extra players, I think you want to sign Bradley Wright Phillips, who wasn't cheap.
Yeah.
lad called Marlon Pack, who was doing quite well at the time at Cheltenham, I think in midfield. He wanted to get a couple of them in, but the club wouldn't agree to it. So, shame how it ended, but like I say, I loved working for him.
Yeah.
But I knew that when he got another job, listen, I'm not a sort of fortune teller or anything like that, but I knew if he didn't change his ways at Sunderland, the players would get him out.
Yeah.
And as it happened, they did. Because you've got bigger egos there. Lads who's on a lot bigger money, who you can't control. He went in there thinking he could control them, and he couldn't. Not the big hitters.
Yeah.
Not the John O'Sheas of this world and the Cattermoles and all them.
Yeah.
And the stories that they, I think as a group, went to the chairman at Sunderland and said, listen, we can't work for him anymore because of his ways, because they didn't have any days off. They weren't used to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas at Swindon, there was lower level players. He could control you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There was a couple of bigger lads who'd played higher, myself and Jay McEverley, ex-Blackburn and stuff like that. And it was just, if he didn't change, he would get changed. And that's what happened at Sunderland.
Yeah.
And he had his moments at Sunderland. I mean, the win against Newcastle where he slid on his knees and then, I mean, that is forever, will live with you forever as a Sunderland fan. What a moment that was. But unfortunately, he didn't last long, which was a shame. I'm just disappointed that he's not still in football, because I still think he's got a lot to give, even though he's crazy and he had his moments. And we had videos. If we didn't win or if we got beat, times we'd be in at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. And yes, at the time, and I'm looking, and you're going to look at me and think, you are crazy for thinking he was good, or you're thinking you liked him and all that. And a lot of lads have said that to me and say, why do you like him? What? I don't know. The way he worked, I didn't like him for that, because I think there was no need to get you in that early. That was just a power thing. You know, oh, you're all under my control. I'm going to get you in. And he'd bang the telly and he'd shout, he'd be in your face and he'd be in. And going back to, if you were mentally weak, you'd go. He would ruin you, because he would have videos on every individual after every game on a Sunday, and he would go through you and he'd just hammer you.
Really?
He would destroy you. But on the flip side of it, you won, he'd be all over you and he'd give you everything.
Yeah.
So going back to tough love, how my dad was with me as a kid at Shop and Colliery, I used to get it all the time. But then when we were doing well, he praised me, I think, through gritted teeth. But tough love.
Yeah.
And it didn't do me any harm.
Yeah.
I remember when he was at Sunderland, I was obviously coaching then. I used to get in early some mornings. And I remember going to our coach's dressing room, getting showered and getting me a Sunderland training kit on. And I'd walk along the corridor. And there'd be nobody in really, but he was in. And he'd be in, I'm not lying, in just a pair of white briefs from the laundry doing pull-ups.
Yeah, that was him.
Honestly, and I'm like, he's got his whole body out, just a pair of briefs, and he's doing pull-ups, and he was in under.
Pre-season, he would join in. He wouldn't do all the running we did, but he would join in. And like you said, top would be off, shorts rolled up. He loved having his legs out. His legs were massive. And I think when he played, he used to roll his shorts up when he played. And he was so in good shape, for his age. He could still play.
I know.
And he'd join in sometimes in training and do the finishing. But just a legend, just a hero. Growing up, he's an iconic figure in the Premier League game. He got to the top, and I'd love for him to have stayed, longer in management. And it'll take someone brave, similar to Roy Keane, it'll take someone brave to give him another job because of his demands, because he's the expectations and what he expects.
If you look at what he did at Swindon, where he's sitting top of the league, you're flying.
Unbelievable.
It was working.
Yeah, it works.
Not everyone agreed with it as a footballer, because footballers get into a little routine.
Yes, definitely.
And then the one that sometimes on the easy life and picking up the good money. But all of a sudden, somebody does that and it's working.
But that's just, for someone to walk out as well when his team's top of the league, he could have easily just but he's so strong-willed and so strong-minded that if he didn't get it, he was gone. Yeah. To leave the club top, to leave his reputation as well, it's a shame. Going back to Italy, the pre-season we had, he gave us the night out. We had a night out. We went to his friend's villa in the mountains. He let us have a drink, and then he sort of said, right, you can go to this club, mate. We got a bus. And his friends took us on this nightclub. His friends were massive, big bodyguards, you could tell they'd looked after him when he played. It got to about 2 o'clock and we're in this nightclub. I remember all of a sudden the lights came on and Di Canio comes in, sunglasses on, down the stairs with a couple of guys. And you just looked at him, and you just thought, wow, everyone's looking at him, just like that presence, that aura, it was all about him. But sunglasses on in a nightclub was a bit too far, if I'm honest with you. At 2 o'clock in the morning. But
do you think it's always going to be the case with the likes of Keane and Di Canio that they'll get a job and it will last for so long until people can't take any more, and they'll lose the dressing room and be out, because it's difficult to maintain the standards that they're setting and the regime that they're setting.
Yeah, and I think in this day and age, it's hard to sort of the way you coach and the way you manage. Players don't like being told what to do. Even the lads who's been around a little bit, it's changing. And I think egos, you touch on egos, and it's like, what, you having to go at me again? You having to go at me again? And then you just lose the dressing room, and you lose the players.
The money's gone ridiculous.
The money's gone ridiculous, yeah. And we've spoke about this in the previous episode. Lads are getting too much too soon, aren't they? And I don't want to keep
without naming names, Tom, I know a few lads who
no hunger. The hunger's gone.
They've done nothing in the game, and they're on 20 grand a week. You know, some people won't even heard of them. That's what they haven't done.
And fair play to them. It's the club's fault that give them the money, and that's why clubs get into administration in time. Because of the ridiculous money, the gambling.
Yeah.
The gambling on someone who might do well, who might prove yourself, then give them the money.
Newcastle have brought a couple of young lads in. Obviously, under 18s, they might have just gone into first year pro, 7 grand a week. Nobody's ever heard of them. They are in the top pro game, and they're on 7 grand a week.
But I tell you where it hurts the fans, that is, Sunderland did it. Man United have been doing it as well. They'll pay people ridiculous money, and they'll pay kids and stuff like that, thousands and thousands a week. But then they'll make cuts and they'll lay off the dinner lady, who was on 20,000 a year or something.
Been there for years. It's part of the furniture. Absolutely.
And they're the bits that fans go, hang on, what's going on here? Like,
wrong.
The club's not being run well if you haven't to lay off the dinner lady.
We're not on mega money.
So obviously you didn't get promoted to Swindon. You've had a little stint in the management side of it. What was your next stop?
Well, my next step, I'm 34. I'm thinking, obviously, retirement's sort of looming. I haven't got a lot more time left, even though I'm fit and I'm feeling well. Am I going to go part-time? Maybe do I want to go down that route? And then I get a phone call from Bury, Kevin Blackwell, who tried to sign me for Leeds years and years ago. He rang me and he just said, listen, will you come to Bury? Will you come and sort of come in and have a look and see if we like you and you like us? And they'd had a bad start of the season. I'd sort of done my own training. I went into Middlesbrough, actually, and did some pre-season training there with Tony Mowbray, who I knew when I went to Ipswich the first time, So he just said, come in and do some pre-season training. So I did a little bit in there, and I was sort of training with the 21s and bits and bobs, keep myself ticking over, keep myself fit. I got a phone call from Scotland, actually, before I went to Bury, from Alan Johnson, who used to play for Sunderland. And he just said, listen, why don't you come in to Kilmarnock? So I went up there, had a little look at that, and it was all right. It was okay. It was Scottish football. But I ended up going to Bury. Kevin Blackwell I felt like he really wanted me. They were in League 2 or Division 3 or whatever, League 2 at the time. So I decided to go there. They'd had financial issues. They'd started the season poorly. I think they were in the bottom 3 or 4 when I joined. I joined about October time, so I missed the first month.
Right.
And it was all right. I was travelling every day, which was a little bit further than Huddersfield. 2 hours. 2 hours there, 2 hours back. I was commuting. But again, it was one of them where I was playing, but I wasn't really enjoying it, if I'm honest with you. I think the enjoyment was starting to go. Whether that was because of the level or the standard of players I was playing with or against. In Bury itself, it's gone out of existence now, which is an absolute shame. It's a really good club. Again, another one with good tradition, good history behind it. And it didn't quite feel right, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
And Kevin Blackwell lost his job. Ronnie Jepson came in, who was the assistant. He sort of got the job a little bit, but it didn't really. There was a few games where I thought, I'm enjoying it, but at the same time, we weren't doing great and we weren't winning. And when you're not winning, you're obviously not going to enjoy it.
No.
Neither. So I had a year there, and David Flitcroft came in as a permanent manager I think he came in January time, maybe, so it was the last few months of the season. And he was sort of on to me a little bit about can you move closer, or would you be prepared to stay over? And I wasn't. It wasn't for me. I was 34. I definitely wasn't going to move. There was a hotel which I'd stayed over once or twice, but at the same time, I'm finished training at 12:30. I can be home at 2:30, 3 o'clock. I can have my own bed.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's one of them where I'm not there all day. So I was travelling every day there and back, and it maybe caught up on us a little bit, which it will, the stiff backs and all that sort of stuff. But I did a year, and that was it. At Bury, yeah. So after that, I was moving on again.
And that's where we'll wrap things up for part 2 of Tommy Miller interview here on Pete Yatta Crack. Massive thanks again to Tommy for coming on, sharing some brilliant stories from his playing days from Sunderland to Ipswich and beyond. If you haven't caught part 1 yet, make sure you give it a listen and watch out for part 3. Don't forget to follow Pete Yatta Crack on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. Give us a shout in the comments, tag your mates, and let us know your favourite Tommy Miller or Stu Brightwell memory. Cheers for listening, and we'll catch you next time for more proper Pit Yatta Crack.